Hello YouTube, this is a high definition review on the Sega Dreamcast. This is a 128-bit system released in 1999. This was actually released basically before its time. I mean, it was the technology was way ahead. This was a pretty decent system. Is very underrated, I will say that. You know, a lot of developers would not push the power of the Dreamcast, and I think that was one thing that hurt the Dreamcast. There was only about a million of them sold, so there wasn't, you know, a real high sell. And if you notice, it's the first Sega system with 4 controller ports. I will note that. Also note, compatible with Windows CE. A lot of games were Windows CE games that worked with the Dreamcast. You know, it had compatible with Windows CE type software. It had a toolkit for Windows CE that allowed it to expand its capabilities. Now, if you notice, it has 2 buttons. It has a power and then an open button. And if I hit the open button, obviously there's a game in there. And this cover is even nicer than the Saturn. I mean, it's bigger, but it feels so sturdy. It's got like a geared like hinge. It opens slow. It don't just fly open. This was a lot smaller than the Saturn. I will say it is definitely a well-built system. It feels heavy. Feels nice and sturdy. I will say it is kind of loud though. Fans kind of loud in it. You know, the disk drive's kind of loud. Has a lot of loading times. Has very lousy loading times. I think the loading times are even longer than the Sega CD. So loading times are definitely one thing about the Sega Dreamcast. Now, another thing about the Sega Dreamcast is there is no copy protection. I mean, if you try to burn a Sega Dreamcast game, it won't work. But if you try to download like the ROMs and extract them and put them on a disk and put them in the Dreamcast, it will play them. However, it will burn your reader out, so I wouldn't recommend it because they definitely didn't have very good readers. Now, the fan is on this side, and then it has 3 ports on the back. It has your AV cables, which this was also a progressive scan system, and it also had a network adapter. It was also the first system that would surf the internet. But this was dial-up or broadband, either one. Now, it had the power cord, and then it had the AV cable, and it had video cables, component cables, or RF or S-video. So there was quite a few choices there in the way of hooking a Dreamcast up. Now, the light on the front is a little bit different. You notice it's kind of like an arrow, and this illuminates orange because this is a Model 2 US Dreamcast. For the most part, the casing wise, there's no difference. It's just different model numbers basically. You got a Model 1, Model 2. The Model 1 and Model 2 look identical. The only difference is basically the model. Now there is a communication port on the back, and that is to connect up to like a disk drive, the same as the one on the Saturn. And the Dreamcast also had something kind of like Sega Netlink, where it would communicate with other games, except it actually initiated more like what we have today. So the Dreamcast is more up to today's standards than it were yesterday's standards. Now, to use the broadband adapter to surf the web, you had to have the web browser 3.0 or higher. So that was one issue with the broadband adapter, but it worked pretty well for the most part. I don't really have any complaints there. Now, a lot of people say the Dreamcast is sensitive. I haven't found it sensitive, but you never know. So I will say you don't have the power supply is internal on this, and it also on the Sega Saturn. These particular 2 systems had the internal power supply and then just used a cord. And you see that real notoriously with PlayStation. PlayStation's that way. Now, to power it on, I just hit the power button, and then I get a boot up on my TV, and then I notice I get the fancy Dreamcast boot up. And it takes a moment to load up. Now, I'm not going to let it go to a game, but I'm going to hit the open button there, and you notice I get the menu. Now, my battery's shot in my Dreamcast, so I have to reset the time if I unplug my Dreamcast. And now, so you notice that on the screen. Now, one thing I will point out, the Dreamcast controller. I do have one of those, and these are actually up to today's standards too. I think this is where Microsoft got their idea for a controller, because the Xbox controller is very similar to a Dreamcast controller. Put the camera down there. Now, if you'll notice, the ends on the Sega Dreamcast controller are a little bit smaller than a Saturn or a Genesis controller. Notice it plugs in there, and I'm gonna leave that open. But this is a Dreamcast controller, and you know, I'm gonna say it's not real fancy, but it works. You know, it looks kind of like something you'd see in outer space, kinda. But it has a start button. It has A, X, Y, and B, and then they're colored. Has a D-pad, and also has a control stick. And as for most control sticks, I think this is a fairly decent control stick. Let me set my date there. Let's see. Today is the... There we go. And you'll notice, anyway, now in this controller has also two buttons on the bottom side, which I'm not sure. I think this is L and then this is R. And then you'll notice with these the cord comes out of the bottom, which kind of sucks because. Let's see what's going on here. Apologize. Now, you can actually plug two memory cards in this, or you can put a memory card and a rumble. Now, I don't have the memory card that actually has a screen, but I'm going to get one. But those can be kind of annoying because of the battery, and battery goes bad every time you start the system. Anyway, yeah, every time you start the system, it makes a loud noise. Now, normally on these, you would hook a memory card and a rumble, and I don't have a rumble pack, so I can't show you one of those. But if I get one, I'll do a review on it. For the most part, that's about it for the controller. Okay. Now, as you'll notice here, this is what the menu screen looks like, and it's got file, play, music, and settings. Now this is quite different from the Sega Saturn or the Sega CD, obviously. Quite a bit nicer too, quite a bit more graphical, you know, colorful, and it looks pretty realistic. Looks like something you'd see today. Definitely for 1999, yeah, I think they did pretty well. Anyway, they have music, play, file, and settings. Now, if I hit file, that's the memory card, and then it shows me I got a memory card and tells me it's pretty full, obviously. But that's pretty much it. It will play audio CDs, but like I said, I wouldn't recommend it. It does not play DVDs. A lot of people ask that, and it does not play video CDs. So it won't play any kind of a video type disc, but it will play audio CDs, but it will wear out your reader. Now, if you notice at the top, it does say Dreamcast, and then it shows the date and the time. So it's all right. It's an all right system. Now, let's see. For the most part, that's about it. This concludes our review of the Sega Dreamcast.